Two rugby people in here, but welcome to the Sweet Arts of Fighting podcast. Today we have Craig Twentyman. Welcome, Craig.
G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm good. No, thanks for coming on. And I think
All
we've got
right.
some good topics, and I guess you're the perfect man to answer some of the questions that I've had recently from various listeners and followers of the site. So, but first, do you want to maybe give a brief background about yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, cool. Okay. From New Zealand, born and bred. University in Otago, the mighty Otago, the Highlanders. All the good teams back in the day. And then me and my girlfriend from uni, and now my wife, we decided to move to Oz after graduation. So I did a lot of my first real S&C jobs and exposure to S&C came in Australia, which was an awesome place to learn. There's some unreal people working in Australia, and they're always sort of top of the world with innovation and sports science and all that sort of thing. I did my master's when I was over there, and my first real S&C gig was with a unit in the Aussie Navy called the Clearance Divers. So you sort of liken them to the SEALs, not quite at that level. That's just under the Special Forces, if you like. But weapons trained, specialist sort of dive team, but land based as well as water based. And then I was sort of volunteering at some rugby clubs. And I got a gig with the Australian Rugby Union, which sort of went for 12 years or so, and started out with the schoolboy level, schoolboy, schoolgirl, women's, like was still developing at that stage. Had exposure to the sevens programs, but then I sort of went full time with the women's sevens when they centralised and professionalised with the view to going towards Rio, that first Olympics, which we ended up getting a gold medal out, which was very exciting. Played New Zealand, the homeland, in the final. A bit strange. Found myself singing the national anthem at some stages, but it was awesome to work with that group. That coach, Tim Walsh, awesome coach to learn sevens off. Obviously, I played it a little bit when I was growing up, not to his level, but sort of got the idea of having to be almost the ultimate athlete, contact, strength, power, speed, and fit as fuck, if you like. So then went over to the men's, and then got seconded by Dean Benton to work with the Wallabies at the 2019 World Cup, which was an awesome experience.
Nice.
And then got a role to move the family back to New Zealand with the New Zealand Warriors up the Waz, going so well.
What a
Going to
season
the
so
final
far,
series.
eh?
Yeah. But that was a challenging couple of years because we moved back to New Zealand, but I ended up being based in Australia because it was during that COVID time, and the team had to be based away. So it was, I look back, it was an awesome experience. I loved working in rugby league, and there were some really good people at the club at the time that I was there. But we had, coaching changes, boys not wanting to be there, wanting to be at home with their families, which is understandable. And, it was, challenging for a lot of people in a lot of ways. But at the end of the 2021 season, I managed to get an assistance role with the Black Ferns, which is the New Zealand women's 15s team, with the view to work with them at the World Cup that happened at the end of last year. And, again, went into that role, and there was a few changes and a bit of upheaval soon after I went in there, and I ended up leading that sort of space there. And that's the role I currently sit in now. So we managed to win the World Cup last year, which was awesome, being at home in front of a packed crowd, sort of heard of or unheralded sort of experience for women's rugby in New Zealand. And then, here we are now.
Nice. Awesome. That's a great background. And I think listeners are going to be sick of me saying this, but I still think rugby sevens is, I guess, like is the closest thing physical preparation wise to combat sports. And if we're comparing different sports, I say that often on here, and I think there's a lot of crossover and carryover we can get from it. But one of the questions I've had recently, and I've had quite often, is about gaining weight, gaining size, building muscle without losing the speed and power. And I think, especially within combat sports, a lot of people, actually most sports really, a lot of people go down this road, okay, I need to get bigger. So they jump on the bodybuilding program they found from Jay Cutler in the 1990 whatever Flex
Yeah.
magazine, and
How
they
good?
bro
Yeah.
yeah bro splitting it, chest
Yeah.
day, etc. And then they come out of that after how many months, and they're like, oh shit, I can't run, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm
Yeah.
slow, etc., etc. So do you want to maybe dive into maybe your approach around gaining size and strength? Obviously within rugby it's important, but with maintaining the ability of speed, power, fitness, etc.
Yeah, so I guess it's a multifaceted question, and there's a thousand ways to skin a cat. We all know that, especially in the S&C world. What works for some people, some individuals, some groups, just doesn't work for others. But I sit very much on the spectrum that maximal strength is vital to performance within the sport of rugby, and as you'd say, it's an awesome sport if you're looking at fight sports as well. The crossover of the conditioning as well as the technical side of things is very important. And rugby league is very similar. Rugby league probably more so with
Yeah.
the focus wrestle aspect to it.
Yeah.
But I also feel that it's very important to keep in mind that you have to develop force producing abilities that are robust to different body positions. Okay, so what we think of as the traditional way of max strength training with the barbell and very set planes doesn't hold up when you get into contact and wrestle situations in the chaos of team sport. And I'd say that would be very similar to the chaos of a
Yeah.
fight, in that, chaotic environment where people are coming at you from different angles and you have to adjust and still be able to produce force robustly in different planes and positions. And that's where I think the how strong is strong enough point for team sport athletes actually comes a lot sooner than what you might think of as typical how strong is strong enough, past which point I think that the return on investment of more maximal strength training is limited, whereas you could focus a little bit more in different areas and ways of doing things that will continue to develop your ability to be robust in your force producing capabilities and in different positions that you find yourselves in. So I'm definitely a proponent of like that West Side conjugate sort of model, maximal dynamic repetition method training, but I'm also very wary of being able to produce force explosively through a number of different ranges, different velocities with different external sort of stresses on the system. And that's where that dynamic systems theory of force production, I guess, that Bosch talks about and that we've spoken about a little bit, comes into play. And I'm by no means an expert on the complexities of Franz Bosch's work, but there's
Yeah.
some things that just make sense to me. And some of those include the upper body, lower body separation,
Yeah.
and trying to, keep your running robust, if you like, and your running capabilities robust. And also the concept of minimizing muscle slack, if you like, when you're talking about that early rate of force development and someone being reactive and able to produce force at a high rate. Yeah. So when you're talking about putting muscle mass on and that sort of thing, we always lean towards finding volume through sets rather than reps, if you like. So keeping the percentage of your max, if you like, high, and performing number of sets rather than your typical 8 to 10 to 12, 15 rep sort of sets. And then
Yep.
making sure that you're always thinking about the transference of your force producing capabilities into your actions on the field or in your sort of audience's concept, in the ring. And making sure that you're complementing your traditional strength training with exercises that require you to produce force quickly through different ranges, through different tempos, and that sort of thing.
Nice. We'll dive deeper into that too, but we talked a lot about, I guess we touched on the kind of Bosch dynamical systems theory approach to stuff. I was lucky, I mean, you worked with Dean Benton and things, so you obviously got a lot of exposure to it. I was lucky enough to learn a lot of the stuff firsthand from John Pryor
Yep.
at the game conference in
Yep.
2017, and I was lucky enough to be the demo person for a lot of the
Oh,
stuff. So
bad
I
luck.
fucked it all.
They just
That's good.
they just try and make you look as bad as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So that means like I fucked it all up. So that means
Yeah.
I could coach it later because I knew all the points. I was like, okay, this is actually good. But
It's enhanced, isn't it? Like performing it
exactly,
as badly as possible. Yeah.
exactly.
It
Trying to
can
do all the
only go
hip
one
hop
way.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But I'm a huge fan of a lot of those ideas. Again, the upload association. I mean, within sprinting, the foot from above and things like that. But I guess kind of linking it all together for the listeners as well, because you talked about obviously, for example, you're doing your traditional weight training, then you might have this kind of stuff might typically be a bridge, quote unquote, between what you're doing there and transferring, or
Yep.
what we call it reflex training or some kind of power training. Do you want me to just dive into some of those concepts and what some of those exercises kind of look like and what they're
Yeah.
trying to achieve, or at least what you're trying to do with them?
Yeah. So you might have, say, as an example, I'll give you like a couple of, big circuits that we use. Like we might have a lower body strength option, traditional single leg, double like bilateral, something through big ranges of motion. And then we might like transfer to like a bent over jackal position. So you're loaded through the lower body, you're over a ball, for example, and like someone's trying to move you off that out of that position. But we might bridge it with a maximal squeeze through a soft mid ball for like a
Yeah.
6 second effort, like high rate of force development is strongly squeezing that as possible. And then you might transition to like say a big band around your waist. You're in that bent over position. You've actually got a live person on the ground there holding a ball. You're trying to jackal over that position, and then someone is trying to like pull you or wrench you out of that position. So you're getting a lot of external perturbation like through different angles, holding like a basic position, but you're having to stabilize within that basic position. Or
Yeah.
another option, like specific to running, if you like, and skill execution. So we might on the field have some wickets set up. So we might like coast the athletes through a set of wickets. We might give them like an aqua bag or like even a plate, and they might go through the wickets again, and they're like punching through different angles, or they're like rotating the aqua bag. So you're trying to reinforce robust running mechanics. Front side mechanics, attacking down, keeping your thigh separation, keeping that sort of like fast thigh angular velocity, all those key points that they talk about with speed development, while focusing on that sort of upper lower body separation. And then you might transition to actually like having someone like to the side. You either keep going through the wickets or you go to the side, trying to keep those lower body mechanics, and then receiving and passing. So you're like linking that basic skill and the robustness of your running to being able to execute a skill in that sort of at that velocity and with accuracy. So things like that. And it might be as simple as, say, we go back to like a basic bench press for your strength. You might go like a real wide sort of pulse fly in that wide position. And then you might go an explosive push up, for example. Yeah. So you're focusing on strength as well as the transference to like a grapple wide position or like contact wide. What I found when I was working in that league, they're very rugby league, they're very front on contact compared to union.
Yeah.
Union, like as you know, like you're trying to take people down, get up and over the ball. Whereas league, you're trying to hit and hold and delay that time to the ground, and
Yeah.
then wrestle them to delay that time for them to get back to their feet. And we had a couple of instances where guys would get outside slightly what they're used to, very front on, and the same in the gym, very front on. They get slightly outside, and they'd come out of that contact and go, oh shit, and they had a peck injury. So
Yeah.
being comfortable in different ranges, at different velocities, is very important to make sure your force producing capabilities stay robust.
Nice, nice. Yeah, some of those running ones are options I've used too, and yeah, I really like how they transfer well to the actual sport. But I
Yeah,
guess a random example, like obviously you mentioned about the jackling over the ball, so it could be, for example, a squat, and someone who's maybe a grappler could be fighting over unders or something like that from a
yeah,
standing position,
yeah.
just as an
That's right.
example. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So someone could
and
kind of blend that skill in.
yeah, that's right. And it doesn't necessarily mean to need to be like linked with a strength exercise, but when we're talking about linking your strength training to your skill, it's important, I think, to integrate them. You're not going to get direct transference, but you will get just a cognitive link, if you like, between what you're doing from a strength point of view can transfer to performance. And I think that's where a lot of breakdown occurs. Not breakdown, if you like, but there's like a limited transference between what's happening in the gym and actually how that
Yeah,
integrates into what's happening on the field.
yeah, for sure. Do you want to maybe dive into a little bit of those aqua bags as well? Kind of what you're trying to do from there, and maybe a quick explanation of what that is for anyone listening.
Yeah, Equibag is like just a big bag sausage, or you can get round ones filled with water. And yeah, if you haven't filled an Equibag before, make sure you don't fill it up. Impossible to move. So there's just a little bit of water, and obviously you fill them to different weights, so you can focus on different things. But when we're talking about providing external perturbations to an action, Equibags are really good because they provide that stabilization requirement, if you like, and will put you sort of slightly off your center when you're performing an action. So there might be punches when you're running. There might be you might be splitting your legs, like jump splits, if you like, while you're rotating. So you're having to stabilize on that ground contact slightly each time, that sort of thing. With the round ones, you can say halfbacks, for example, will like maybe perform some pickup and like throws, if you like, or not throws, but punches before they do like a pickup and pass. So you're sort of putting yourself in the position, providing some external perturbation, and then performing the skill action that you're after.
Nice. Do you have any, I guess you'll say, quote unquote, core or trunk exercises you like to do with those that some of the audience might like to, I don't know, explore, or even without the aqua bags?
Yeah, so in GHD, for example, you can set yourself up either side bridge, front bridging, or back bridging, if you like, and perform like really explosive punch outs. And so you're stressing the muscles at different angles and different actions, performing slow versus like fast punch and back in. So your
Yep.
trunk muscles are having to switch on fast and switch off, or having to sustain an action. So you're again trying to paint as many pictures, if you like. That's what I like to talk to athletes about, like painting pictures for your body to adapt to. And anything you're doing, whether it be traditional strength training, trunk training, trying to replicate the chaos of sport when you're doing your skill training, try and expose and paint as many pictures as you can for your body to adapt to. And that's like you talk
Yeah.
about the west side side of things. That's what they do with the changing of their bars and changing of their exercises across a phase. So you're always trying to expose your body to many different stimuli, if you like.
Yeah, I really like that, especially if any, I mean, all combat athletes, strikers, grapplers, MMA, and stuff like that, that off the glute ham raise, lying, I guess you could say,
Yep,
lying face up with your bum
yep,
on the actual
yep. That's
pad,
the one. Yep,
holding your plate or your aqua bag, and then
yep,
doing fast or slow pulses in different directions.
yep.
Anyone listening, give that a try for
You can
sure.
even do it with a weight plate, mate. I reckon if you don't have an aqua bag, like
Yeah.
start with a light weight plate, 2.5, 5 kgs, and really focus on like experimenting with different angles of punches, different speeds. So you might have a set where you're doing 8, and you might do like 1, 2 like that, and then like a real slow, focused effort. Just again, painting a picture for your body, trying to expose it to different intensities, if you like.
Yeah.
And then like really, you flip over, so you face down. This
Yep.
is really good one for your hamstring, lower back. Like lock one leg in, and again, like you're throwing the plate down, if you like. So you're having to really switch on, switch off fast in different angles for your hamstring, which is something that we use to try and help strengthen that posterior chain.
I hope you're enjoying the chat so far. Before we get back to that, I just want to let you know that Sweet Science of Fighting is more than just a podcast. We have a full training app with strength conditioning programs for strikers, grapplers, and MMA athletes, so you don't have to think about what you're doing and you're getting access to the latest scientific methods to improve combat sports performance. We have programs specifically for judo, for jiu-jitsu, for wrestling, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai is coming soon. All these things are going to be in the training app. We also have a private community where some of the coaches that have been on the podcast are in there to help you with any training questions and any performance questions you have. For example, Andrew Usher and Casper DeWitt. We also have some online courses within the training app. They cover strength, conditioning, mental skills, and weight cutting. And finally, we now have Ryan Villalobos in the community, a second degree jiu-jitsu black belt, who is there to break down any of your grappling matches that you want seen to by a second eye. He's currently breaking down videos on a separate Sweet Science of Fighting YouTube channel, and he will break down your video within the community. So if you have a match or a roll that you just recorded, you can upload that in there and Ryan will break that down for you. So what are you waiting for? Jump down in the description. You can check out the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground. Otherwise, enjoy the podcast. Yeah, I actually had a whole progression system with that one. I would eventually progress to like a twist, a rapid twist. Yeah, that was nice. The players actually really enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
And you don't get the same soreness if you're doing.
No, that's right. Something different. You know, you can challenge them in that isometric, in those isometric positions where your soreness isn't going to be as great as if you're sort of doing a lot of eccentric work or whatever.
Yeah. I actually have a question here from the YouTubes asking if you're a believer in heavy weight bags for long distance running.
Heavyweight bags.
I don't know what for. I'm assuming just carrying like a heavy backpack or something for long distance running.
Yeah, funny you should say that. I made some notes around conditioning because you sort of floated that you might want to talk a little bit about that. And I've definitely used weighted walks before. You know, with a barbell over your back or a weighted vest or something like that. But a water bag is a great option as well because again, like you're always having to stabilize it. If you look at some of the army camps, you see them carrying jerry cans. It's tough work, and really good for that sort of, if you like, that lower zone training, zone 1, zone 2, like sustaining an effort, which again, I don't think team sport athletes do enough of that sort of like real low zone training. You put someone in a team sport athlete, you'll find their heart rate ramps very quickly. If you put them into anything where they have to endure anything more than sort of 5 minutes. So teaching or exposing them to those sort of longer duration, low zone efforts, I think is definitely an important aspect that's often overlooked.
Nice. And I want to bring this back a bit too to building muscle and keeping that speed and power. So we talked a little bit about, I guess, some of that conjugate method, when you're doing the repetition method or doing your reps, using more sets instead of more reps to get your volume.
Yeah.
But maybe let's cover some just general training week stuff. So how often would you be looking to, say, hit the gym and be lifting to build muscle? How often would you be looking to train quote unquote specific like speed power stuff? Where does conditioning fit into that as well? Is there a way to balance it all so someone can retain those qualities while getting bigger?
Yeah, I think building muscle is always an interesting one. We have athletes, obviously, that come in as young, and especially working in the female sort of space. There's a lot of athletes and that sort of schoolboy level that I used to work with. There's athletes that, they definitely just need to put some muscle mass on, and it's not always just going to be through that high weight effort stuff. There is going to be a repetition sort of method aspect to it. And that might be, tagged onto the back of main sets, for example, or they might come in for a standalone gym session once or twice a week where they're focused on that sort of repetition effort stuff. Sometime during the week where they're actually it's not going to impact on how they pull up for the sessions the next day. But also calories in is a big thing as well, and that's an education piece. That's required, actually eating enough to fuel muscle gain and a lot of people, and you know, like I've seen it quite a few times. A lot of the younger athletes who have been successful to that point because they're super fit, and I guess
Yeah.
this might go, might happen in the fight scene a little bit as well, where they're shit scared of getting outside their normal calorie intake because they're scared they'll put too much weight on.
Yeah.
And I guess in a weight class sport like fighting, that's a key consideration. But eating enough calories to fuel muscle gain and eating the right calories is a big education piece, which is for someone to communicate that's more knowledgeable in that space than what I am. But how we set the week up is really important as well. Tony Holler always talks about not burning the steak and making sure that today doesn't sort of ruin tomorrow. So you've got to be mindful about how you set that up and the different stages, pre-season versus in-season. Pre-season looks a lot different from a strength point of view to what in-season does. We might be in the gym sort of 4 to 5 times for those athletes that want to be or need to put a bit of mass on. They'll be doing some extra sessions around that sort of repetition stuff. Whereas in season, we might have two main strength power sessions, and then like a pre-captain's run power up session. Some will do a game day primer, which is short, sharp, explosive, integrated with some skill stuff. But yeah, pre-season versus in season also looks different. Where you've got that time and capability to put yourself in the hurt locker a little bit more and train fatigued, versus where you want to be like peaking for that Saturday game.
Nice. And then with the differences in season, if you've got players that's maybe I don't know, maybe they're younger players and they're not playing as many minutes or whatever it is, and they still need to pack on mass, there might be even some people in the fighting space that maybe you're in a similar situation, they need to pack on mass, but they're competing quite often. Is there something that you're doing in there, or how different is it in there when you're giving them that stimulus? Obviously, you can't blast them with, like you mentioned, during preseason, but are you still adding a bit of that in, just lower volume?
I think that's where the microdosing concept comes in, and it's quite handy to think about it as, say, day after a game is a really good opportunity to microdose a little bit more repetition stuff, especially through that upper body, compared to, say, if they've outputted like 5Ks or like a really high net game involvement the day before. Just get a little bit of extra work done through the upper body on that game day +1 or fight day +1. Look at me talking like I'm a fight expert. Or then even midweek where you've got your recovery day, you might get those athletes into a gym session for an extra half-hour blast. Even though it's their recovery day, it's not going to take away too much from the next day's training. And the way you set the week up, you might have your main strength sessions earlier in the week. You might have these people in extra for like a little hit on the Wednesday, and then it might be just that sort of power session towards the end of the week. So front loading the week a little bit allows you to get some extra work in.
Nice. Regarding training splits, actually, within like because obviously you play weekly, or a lot of the time you play weekly. Some grapplers will often compete even, I guess, as often as weekly, bi-weekly. A lot of fighters might even compete monthly if they're competing often.
Yeah.
What kind of training split do you usually gravitate towards there? Are you doing like a full body strength, full body power? Are you doing upper lower? Is there one that you prefer?
Generally full body in season. But we generally skew it to, so the first session of the week, so game day +2 generally, we'll have a lower body stimulus in there, but it will be predominantly upper body. And then game day +3, going into our day off, will generally be lower body focus, but with, like a little circuit in there that might have a little bit of an upper body focus. So we might have an upper body robustness circuit on that game day +3, but primarily lower body. And then on that game day +2, it might be predominantly upper body, but like a lower body robustness circuit or a couple of jumps or something like that, So
Nice.
just skewing it slightly. Generally, full body. In pre-season, we split it a little bit differently. It might be an upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. So you can
Mm.
focus a little bit more exclusively on the body parts. But I like very rarely would we go chest tries, back thighs.
I don't think anyone does that in the sports performance
What?
sports performance as well.
Is that
That'd be
not common anymore? Oh, okay.
that'd that'd be unreal. That would be that would be a great S&C program there. But
Yeah.
do you have any of I guess power power exercises you like to use in the gym that you kind of lean towards or you tend to program often, ones that you find useful?
Yeah, I'm like a massive fan of like plyo work, and I think sometimes when you're looking at programs, I feel they're skewed too much towards traditional strength training and not enough
Hmm.
towards like plyo work.
Yeah.
So, as a comparison, a full range squat for strength versus like a frog jump or a depth drop into a full squat into a maximal effort, like contrasting
Yeah.
the athleticism required between the two and the transference effect to improving your ability to move yourself on the field. Um, I think again it comes back to that: how strong is strong enough, and what can we be doing outside maximal strength or traditional strength training to enhance our athleticism. So we do a lot of like that sort of uh, dead start jumping, so rocket, box, like sitting on a box into a maximal effort broad or jump for height, bounding, hopping, dead start jumps through different ranges, both bilateral and unilateral,
Hmm.
and then looking at rate of force development stuff or like reactive stuff versus starting from deeper ranges through like taking that counter movement out of it, and then also incorporating your ballistic stuff there. So
Yeah.
your throws and your explosive rotational throws and that sort of thing. So yeah, so
No,
we contrast regularly with our max strength stuff, a lot of that sort of jumping stuff.
nice. Do you want to maybe just dive into a little bit for the listeners as well, that idea around muscle slack? Because obviously you talked a lot about jumping from like a dead start position, like
Mm,
seated.
mm.
I'm assuming that's the muscle slack theory there you're playing into. Do you want to maybe just dive into a little bit of that and kind of the reasons why?
Yeah, so a good descriptor or a way to conceptualize it was so muscle slack's like having a rope tied to a car and you pick the rope up, so you take some slack out of it. But then there's also the slack when you actually try to start to pull the car, and the tension having to be taken up through the rope. So if you look at all that reactive training, so dropping off a box into a reactive jump or hop, anything that's challenging that ability to produce force quickly in a reactive way, I think has a really, well, it's not utilized enough, if you like.
Mm.
And it goes to injury resilience as well, so being able to be strong or hold strongly your joint angles required to produce your maximal force outputs. So there's
Mm.
that isometric component to it as well, and
Yeah, I guess the other way.
understanding. Yeah,
Yeah, so say another way of maybe thinking about it for listeners as well is like the idea of that pre-tension, right? So if you're dropping
yeah,
off a box,
yeah,
you're already tensed and ready for the landing. So
yeah.
when you
That's
hit the
right.
ground,
Yeah,
there's no delay
yeah,
between that force that for that rebound versus. I know. I think Bosch went really far with it. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to. He doesn't want to do any counter movements because he believes
yeah,
counter movements increase the muscle slack. But I don't. I'm not sold on
yeah.
removing
Again,
counter movements completely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, by no means an expert of it.
Yeah.
The thing I really like with guys like Dean and John Pryor, as you mentioned,
Mm,
they've got a good balance. They seem to have a good balance between,
yeah.
the traditional way of being strong and robust and the concepts around what Bosch is trying to communicate and his ways of doing things.
Yeah. I'm gonna get Bosch on this podcast actually. Maybe I should at
Yeah,
some point. Yeah,
imagine
yeah,
that.
may as well.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Make
Shit,
sure
yeah.
you translate it for everyone.
Yeah, I'll do my best. But you mentioned about being strong enough. Do you have an answer for that question? How strong is strong enough?
I reckon it's different for everyone. Like I remember, when I first started with the women sevens, they have very little strength training background. So we worked hard and like we got really good payback for their general athleticism just by getting the athletes stronger.
Yeah.
And then we'd sort of put some relative sort of focus and absolute focus points in front of them and try and get them to work towards, for example, like box squat of 2 times body weight. And that's not like a 90 degree, that's like partial ranges. Still cracks me up, when you see the comments around partial range strength training and, oh,
Yeah.
that's not full range and all this sort of thing. Like,
Dude, but it's all like strength people who haven't trained anyone in any sports outside
yeah,
of powerlifting or strength
yeah,
sports. It's just
yeah,
strength sports coaches
yeah.
that only know strength sports. It's a
Yeah,
completely different animal.
yeah. I think as we touched on earlier, being exposing your body to a number of different tempos, different ranges, is important to paint the picture of what they're going to come across in their team, in their sport, the chaos of sport, and being able to produce force at a high rate in those different ranges and positions is really important.
Yeah, I think that the strong enough debate as well, like it's always centered around how much you squat
Yeah,
or deadlift or bench, but
yeah,
that's just an expression of
yeah,
force through a skill, right?
yeah.
So it doesn't really tell us much because you can get people who are, you know, not strong in those lifts, but when they're on the field or whatever, they'll
Oh,
bend you in
exactly.
half.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. You got and like you must see it all the time in the fighters. Like, a lot of those guys and girls wouldn't be strong in the traditional sense, but
No.
as soon as they grab you, you're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you see it. In contrast, like you see some unbelievably sort of strong athletes in the traditional sense, and then you put them on the field, and they, what do they say? They train like Tarzan, play like Jane. Like
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't transfer all the time. And it's the same with conditioning, eh? Like whatever conditioning test or aerobic marker you use, yo-yo, Bronco is very common in union league.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to transfer that ability onto the field and vice versa. Some of our worst testers are some of the best, gameplay athletes, and that's where it's really
Yep.
important to, I think, identify some key sort of metrics and ways of measuring, you know, prep, if you like, related to the game itself, and then making sure that you're seeing improvements or enhancements in those metrics versus just relying on traditional testing data.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the the first pro team I had in Romania. We had a player fresh off the boat Tongan kid, and he was a really damn good player. He was quick, and we ended up doing just a simple like MAS run,
Yeah,
and he could barely even complete the damn thing.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
like 8+ minutes for
yeah,
like 1.6K,
yeah,
like the shittest time ever. But
yeah,
on the like, he'll play a whole game and he'll carve up.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just finding that these tests don't always well, they don't tell you playing ability. They kind of just
Yeah,
give you a
and
general mark.
that's where you try and find specificity in your testing to the actual game to get the outputs you're looking for, eh? And I've seen it a number of times, like sitting through a Bronco where some of the athletes are over that 6, 7, 8 minute marker. And it's just like this is telling us absolutely nothing, and it's like purely like a mindset that the athlete's just not going to output what you actually want them to. So you just got to find a better way to assess how they're actually tracking.
So do you use the Bronco testing? 'Cause I know obviously you mentioned it's like a tradition within New Zealand rugby now, but is that something you still use?
Yeah, we do, but it's not the be all end all. We actually like try it out a a few different tests, and one that we're finding like gives us good outputs is like a repeat shuttle test. Basically, start on try line, out to the 20, down, chest to the ground, back to the try line, chest to the ground, and then hard out to 40 and back. Okay, so you're
Yep.
looking at around that sort of 25 to 30 second, or some of the quicker ones are sub 25. And that's around what an average work period is in rugby union. So around that 30 to 40 seconds. And then we're looking at like a 60-second turnaround, or starting each new effort on 90 seconds. And we do 5 of
Yep.
those, and we have a look at their decrement between 1 and 5. We have a
Gotcha.
look at how fast they can go in the first couple compared to their max velocity. With any of those repeat speed sort of tests or assessments, you have to compare it to your max to actually show that you're outputting
Yeah.
a decent effort. And we're also looking at like a high net output, which is a marker that we use via Stat Sport as a way to look at the accel, decel, and high speed cost of an effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So for some listening to this as well, for if they wanted to like implement this without running, for example, they could go on say a spin bike, watt bike, or whatever, and they could do maybe 10 to 30 second sprints
Yeah.
times 5 on the 90 seconds and kind of just track average power on
Yeah.
those and kind of see that as well, and just get an idea of this is my peak and this is how
Yeah.
much I declined throughout these sprints and things.
Yeah, like I mean, there's endless numbers of tests that you see, around that you can use. But the reason we use this is like we're trying to be specific from a work to rest point of
Yeah.
view to the game, versus a Bronco. There's no gameplay continuous in a game of rugby that's above 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
so the Bronco becomes limited from I know it's not meant to, it's just an aerobic marker. It's not meant to be
Yeah.
specific to the game, but we were just trying to find something that is a little bit more specific that will give us the outputs that we're looking for especially from our forwards. We found that
Yeah.
the plot of the Bronco just tells us nothing, So
Especially heavier athletes, say they're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
plod
Well,
their way
you got
through that.
29 turns in a Bronco, which when you're a heavier athlete, the peripheral fatigue actually takes away from your ability to express, your central capabilities.
Yeah.
So finding something that is going to allow you to do that a little bit better and give yourself a better idea, if you like, of what you're capable of.
Hey guys, it's me again. I just want to let you know that I also have Sweet Science of Fighting rash guards and shorts, so you can represent Sweet Science of Fighting on the mats and within competition. We have the classic, just like the shirt I'm wearing, rash guard, Sweet Science of Fighting on the front, and we have the logos on the sleeves, and then X-Marsh on the back. We also have that in a shorts variation, same thing, with the Sweet Science of Fighting writing on one leg, and we have the logo on the other. But my personal favorite, this is my personal favorite by far. We have this in black and white, and it is the Taniwha Protector Guardian version of the Sweet Science of Fighting, with the logo on the back. This was designed by a Māori designer back in New Zealand, so a bit of my heritage on this jersey. It represents the acknowledgement of battle and war. It also represents strength and stability, and also has the New Zealand silver fern. But even if you're not a Kiwi, cop this. This is an awesome design. It is a custom made design. You will not find it anywhere else. So check that. That'll also be down in the description with a discount code. But back to the podcast. Yeah, so if anyone's listening is wondering what the hell a Bronco test is, 20 meters and back, 40 meters and back, 60 meters and back times 5, continuous. And that's basically that test. But you mentioned obviously about the conditioning and transfer. So how are you finding transfer between the conditioning you're doing and then the sport itself? Are you trying to use a lot of, I guess, similar actions that you find in rugby? For example, combining running and wrestling and finding these different intensities, trying to do things like game speed or exceeding game speed and things like that? Or is it just a matter of just doing the work and then the sport will take care of the rest of it as you do in technical training?
Yeah, I think, and I learned a lot from Dean around this. It's important to have basic physical capabilities to output what's required in the game. But beyond that, again, it's kind of like how strong is strong enough, how fit is fit enough. I don't think you need to continue to chase traditional conditioning at the expense of integrating the technical tactical. And I guess that's where the tactical periodization model is really effective. Integrating the physical with the technical tactical as much as possible. Because being fit and fast is all well and good, but if you can't integrate your skills to a high degree of accuracy and perform them to a high degree of accuracy, those outputs aren't going to be able to be expressed anyway. So finding what your game looks like, what your worst case scenario of the game is, if you like, and then like looking at over distorting speed and execution of skill at speed. Then also over distorting or playing around with work to rest ratios and what you come across in the games, and playing around with how you might increase the ball and play time across a block to what you'll find in a game. Say a game's roughly 50-50 ball and play time in the women's game at the moment. Some training sessions, we'll look to over distort that to 75%. And we may not be getting skill accuracy at 75%, but we're continuing, like we're chasing that physical capability to continuously, execute for that 75% of ball and play time across a certain block, So the way you set your week up is important there. You don't want, obviously you can't be training fast all the time. So how you identify where you need to push and pull across a week and how you work with the coaches to make sure that you're not always training at this moderate level. You've got a clear plan in place of how you're going to over distort your high days and make sure that your low days are low enough to allow recovery for your next high day, if you like. So
Nice. Yeah, plenty of concepts that we've covered on the podcast before for anyone listening as well. There's plenty you can go back to and listen to a lot of those concepts too. But I think it's interesting. Obviously, you talked about you're increasing the ball and play time to 75%. You're looking at the outputs there. Obviously, you're looking at lower ball and play times if you're doing more technical skill development with that. But I guess if we translate this to fight sports, for example, MMA, I don't know if you watch much, but I think a good example, if someone was looking at, say, worst case scenario in a fight would be like Khabib versus Justin Gaethje, where Khabib basically just walked down Gaethje for the entire round, and he was just like fucked. He was just like getting mauled the whole time, and he was so gassed. And I think that would be a good example of, if you're doing some kind of, I don't know, sparring, whatever it is, or setting up some kind of training day around that, would be having someone just constantly pressuring you over and over again. And maybe you're extending the time, or you're doing lots of blocks of very high intense stuff, and these just small little, I guess, things people can manipulate to, I guess, have more, what would you call it, like priority over certain things within their training versus just going in and sparring with no real objective.
Yeah, I think that's important, to define what your session, what you're actually wanting to get out of your session, and over distorting that aspect, because you can't over distort everything. Because you're going to end up underdoing some aspect at the expense of over distorting another aspect. So you have to make sure that you map your week out well to make sure you're covering all your bases, if you like, covering your worst case scenarios, covering your ability to endure and that sort of thing, and making sure that each session is not, or you're not burning the stake, if you like, each session, because you're going to have a breakdown somewhere, or you're going to underplay another aspect of it.
Yeah, that's where I think that's where a lot of people fall into that trap, that kind of middle intensity where they think they're training hard because the lungs are burning, the heart's going, you're training for an hour and a half, 2 hours, hardcore, and that's kind of like every day. And it ends up being the same thing. You're not hitting the very high ends, you're not hitting the very low ends, you're stuck in that middle band all week, every week. And at some point something breaks, there's no more progress,
yeah.
burnout, etc., and that's where you run into those issues. So as you
And
mentioned, you go
yeah,
there, Craig.
it's just important. Like we talk about, I mentioned earlier, like training the poles. So training the extremely high end of one, and making sure that you're covering the low range as well. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's perfect. This has been a great chat, Craig. Where can people find you and follow you? I don't think you're very social media
I'm
present
not very
at the
social,
moment.
mate.
Yeah, where can people find you?
No, I'm on Instagram at Craig Twentyman. So you can find me
Oh yeah, I
there.
followed you the other day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I followed you back, mate.
Yeah,
Is that what you meant to
yeah,
do?
yeah. I guess so. If
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
follow me, I don't post much either on there.
No, that's right. Actually, no. No, that's about. Yeah, I was on Twitter, but then that changed. So I went off that. Yeah, yeah. So Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, but that's a bit formal, isn't it? So yeah.
Sweet. I'll link those in the description anyway, so people can find you. You've actually got. If anyone's listening, I'll put Craig's Instagram in the description. But he's got some good examples of some of the stuff we talked about regarding the aqua bags and kind of that Bosch stuff on his Instagram. So make sure you check that out. But thanks for coming on, Craig. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the chat, mate. Thanks for inviting me on.